So since Scott decided to become Iran's mouthpiece, can you please clarify for me what Khomeini means when he says death to America, death to the West, and forceful conversions? Can you translate in the language that you so clearly understand that all of us are missing? Thank you.
Sure. Yeah. So first of all, Khomeini died in 1989. You don't know what you're talking about. Second of all, the chant, you'll notice, all of y'all in the audience and on the panel notice how often the Hawks bring this up and how much heavy lifting these chants are doing. Are you so terrified of chants? In fact, they have no Air Force. They have no Navy. They have no ability. They have no offensive force that they can threaten this country with. So in other words, you're saying you're really upset because they're hurting your feelings by some stupid chant, which of course is terrible politics, and it's a terrible government, but it's not a threat to this country.
When somebody wants to kill you and they are going nuclear, you stop it before it gets too late. No, you are naive. It's okay.
America could have normalized relations with Iran 30 years ago.
Trump gave him 60 days. We didn't have to do this at all. Trump gave him 60 days, and they were too egotistical to meet at the negotiating table.
He had no right to do that.
For this. They had no right to negotiate.
Do that. They have the right to a civilian nuclear program. They're members of the Non-Proliferation Treaty, unlike Israel, which has a secret nuclear weapons program.
Understood.
Okay, I do want to bring in the others.
They have the right to civilian nuclear technology.
I do want to bring in the other two. Look, we've got two other guests who haven't spoken yet. Rob O'Neill.
Right. I'm out. Sorry. Go ahead, guys.
No, it'll be very interesting. Rob O'Neill.
The same position that Eisenhower had on the USSR.
I don't care about Eisenhower. I'm
the same position that Johnson had on Mao Zedong, the craziest person, the most murder psychopath who ever lived. Johnson said, I'm not going to attack him to prevent him from getting a nuclear weapon.
So you should just allow...
Yes, so
your position is we should just allow Iran to try get a nuclear weapon. What do you think the consequences of that in the area would be?
Well, according to Benjamin Netanyahu and Ehud Barak...
I want to do according to Scott Horton.
I agree with Netanyahu when he told Jeffrey Goldberg that he does not fear a first strike from Iran at all. He fears an Israeli brain drain, that talented Israelis of means would just get up, pack up, and move to Florida and feel safer there. And that would be bad for Israel, and it would give Hezbollah possibly more freedom of action in the region. So that was what...
It's a little bit rich because
that was what Benjamin Netanyahu...
And you have no concerns about acquiring a nuclear weapon. And I know you could pivot to
Israel. You know that Israel has a nuclear deterrent.
I'm sure...
Israel has more than 200 nuclear bombs.
I know, but I'm trying to go like...
So what are you worried about?
I don't think you've thought this fully through, so that's why I'm asking you, what do you think the consequences would be in the Middle East? Do you think Saudi Arabia would want to try to acquire a nuclear weapon if Iran did? I'm begging the question because they've said so already. So do you have any concerns about, nuclear... What?
Actually, one of the proposals right now is that they would have a joint nuclear program together.
Okay, so
under a consortium, just like we have multinational nuclear consortiums.
Mohammed bin Salman said that if Iran got a nuclear weapon, they would want to acquire a nuclear weapon. So I guess the bigger issue here would be nuclear proliferation across the Middle East. So I don't know, is that a concern, or is this a pipe dream?
You are begging the question when your whole hypothetical is the day after tomorrow the Ayatollah decides to make a nuke for no reason.
They've been saying they want to make a nuke for
no,
decades.
They haven't.
No, they haven't been.
You're wrong about that.
I think you might be in a little bit of a
anyone
bubble
watching
if you think
this,
otherwise.
Just look up the threat assessment from February of this year by Tulsi Gabbard, and it says they have not made the political decision to attempt.
Maybe I'm a little bit crazy, but I think it's bad for a regime that says death to America to get a nuclear weapon, and to think there aren't going to be consequences of nuclear proliferation in the Middle East, I think is naive and nearsighted, frankly. And again, it doesn't even sound like you have this stuff thought out, frankly.
Yeah, no, I don't know anything about it. They signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty back in 1968.
You're so scared to say so. You think Iran should just la-di-da be able to get a nuclear
Why won't you just let me finish?
Go ahead.
They signed the Non-Proliferation Treaty in 1968. They mastered the fuel cycle in 2005. They have never enriched to weapons grade. They still have a safeguards agreement with the International Atomic Energy Agency, which has inspectors at all of their facilities. When they signed the 2015 deal with Obama and the rest of the Security Council, they poured concrete into their Iraq heavy water reactor. They expanded inspections even to non-nuclear military facilities and scaled back the number of centrifuges spinning at Natanz. I haven't thought this through at all. I really don't know nothing about this.
Why does Iran need a nuclear program at all is the question. Why?
Because so they can sell their oil and burn their local domestic supply of uranium that they mine domestically. They don't buy it on the international market. They have their own supply of uranium. They sell their oil for money.
Yeah.
And,
Why do they need
and
a
have a
nuclear
domestic.
program? They're an oil-rich
And as I
country.
already, the first thing I said about this was it's a latent nuclear deterrent. Wasn't that the first thing I said? Was that it's a latent nuclear deterrent? Just like Brazil has, just like
it's a
Japan
latent
has.
nuclear deterrent, but they don't have any plans.
If
to get a
China
nuclear-
started threatening Japan, Japan could convert their civilian nuclear program to a military nuclear program.
They already have nuclear weapons. I mean, all right.
I didn't say if China got nuclear weapons. I said if China started threatening Japan with them, then China knows Japan could turn around and make nukes. Right now, they don't have nukes because they've been nuked, and they've got an anti-nuke principle that they're sticking by.
Oh, there are nuclear umbrellas.
But if push comes to shove,
going on, but sure.
and that's true, they're allies with the United States. But if push comes to shove, they have demonstrated that they can make nuclear weapons. That's the exact same.
I guess my point here is that nuclear proliferation.
Soviet codes. They belonged to the Soviet military, and the Ukrainians would have had no ability to use them or deliver them. They were married to missiles that were made to fly around the world, not to Russia next door.
But Scott, my point is, and I think this you'll agree with this, my point is if you're Khamenei and you've seen those two examples of Libya, you gave up your nuclear program, Gaddafi gets taken down. You're Ukraine, you gave up your nuclear weapons, and the Russians invaded twice. If you're Khamenei thinking to yourself, the only thing that matters more to me than my nuclear weapons program is my regime's survival. And in 12 days of war, the Israelis specifically, because we hit Fordo and Isfahan and Natanz, we, the United States, hit those sites. We, the United States, hit those sites.
The gleeful nature, Scott, like, stop. Take that out. There's no place here in this room with me, the un-American bullshit. Don't do that. The implication here, man, is that me, am un-American. I've been attacked just like the Russian hoax for being a Putin shill. I'm an American.
Well, when you talk about Ukraine's war with Russia, do you say we or do you say they?
I said we, the United States. We actually.
Well, you added the United States, but you had just described Israel strikes.
Israel didn't strike Fordo, Scott.
He talked about the U.S. attack on. You're speaking to this other people that you've heard that somehow they do say we, and they talk about, I would say, ridiculously, as if I've even heard some people basically put Israel above U.S. and they're American citizens. Yeah, that's fucking ridiculous. But none of those people are in this room. There are demons under the bed. I'm sure those people exist. There's ridiculous people on the internet. There's ridiculous people in Congress. We can criticize them, make fun of them, say they're fucking
The Foundation
crazy.
for Defense of Democracy has been the vanguard of the war party in this country for 25 years.
Well, that's a different criticism, but I was.
It's an important one.
Yeah, but no, you just switched.
Well,
No. There's no un-American. You just switched from the un-American discussion to criticizing policies that particular institute. Fine, criticize the policies.
Yeah,
do
but
that.
what is
Don't
the
do the un-American bullshit.
Lex,
Not
the
here.
neoconservative movement is the vanguard of the Israel lobby. That's who they are. That's what neoconservatism is about.
I'm not a neocon.
That's who the war
I'm not a
party is.
neoconservative, so I don't know who he's talking about, but I'm not a neoconservative.
Let's not mix stuff up.
There is a massive Israel lobby in America, in Washington, that is inseparable from the American war party.
Yeah. I've talked to John Mearsheimer. I respect him deeply. He's one of the most brilliant people speaking on that topic. Great. Okay. Let's just talk about today and the nuclear proliferation. Yes. You guys have been brilliant on this. I'm learning a lot. Let's continue.
Yeah. So
Well, first of all, I would like to go back to the earlier point he was making about the military threat that Russia poses. I would cite Victoria Nuland, by the rules of confirmation bias. If she agrees with me, then that means I'm definitely right. And Victoria Nuland says the current war proves that Russia is a total paper tiger. They're a threat to the eastern and southern 4 provinces of Ukraine, but they can't even take Kiev. The idea that they're going to march on Warsaw, that they're a threat to Berlin, that they're coming for the Baltics and everyone next. You hear Clark use the word like to. Putin would like to rule Portugal and all the land from there to to, the Yucatan Peninsula. So what? That doesn't mean anything. He has no ability to do that whatsoever. It's not just the NATO threat. He doesn't have the armed force to be able to, or the secret spy force to be able to, establish the political hegemony that Clark describes here. It's just a fantasy.
Do you think Israel has the right to do this and to defend itself? Or do you think that this is just a bad idea?
Well, yeah, two separate questions. The way you framed it was launching an aggressive war is defending itself, but that's just because you say it that way. In any other contest, of course, it's completely illegal. This is what Japan did to us at Pearl Harbor, the day of infamy, a surprise sneak attack against a country that wasn't attacking them. And so that was what was going on here. And the fact is, they were in the middle of negotiations. And the reporting now is that Trump was actually shining the Iranians on and was pretending to negotiate with them and was telling them,
let's just insert a couple things.
Statements that he had.
It was Israel that was attacked on October 7th by an Iranian proxy and by Hezbollah. It was also Israel that was attacked by Iran. It was also U.S. troops that were attacked by Iran. Nevertheless, who in their right mind would allow someone, a regime that runs around chanting death to America, death to Israel, or if someone was running around chanting death to Scott Horton, would you want them to have a nuclear bomb?
Well, the thing of it is, as I'm sure you must know, as the CIA and the rest of the intelligence community concluded back in 2007, Iran stopped even researching into how to make a nuclear bomb after George Bush got rid of Saddam Hussein for them. They had no more need for a nuclear weapon at that time. They opened up their books, and everyone watching this knows that Netanyahu has said they're a few weeks away from a bomb for the last 20 years. They still don't have a single one. And in February, the director of national intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, put out the threat assessment, the annual threat assessment. Everyone can read it at dni.gov. And it says that they have not made the decision to begin to pursue a nuclear weapon.
You don't think that the Israelis have better intelligence? Come on.
No. Look, there's nothing saying that late Israeli claims of recent advancement are true. No one else is confirming that at all. In fact, what they had all along, Leland, was a latent nuclear deterrent. It's the same as Germany or Japan or Brazil, where they had shown that they had perfected the fuel cycle. They know how to make nuclear weapons fuel, but they're not making it. And so what has happened here is with this attack, I know you want to hoist up your mission accomplished banner, but with this attack, they're actually more likely to pursue nuclear weapons now, whereas before they actually were not pursuing them, despite your begged question in your question.
To the people of the world. Remember on September 12th, they held a 1 million-man candlelight vigil in downtown Tehran on behalf of the people of the United States. We had the entire world ready to listen to America, ready to join up in our cause. But it wasn't the right cause. It was, hey, you know what we could do? We could get a bonus war. If we could just lie to these people, and we'll just publish in the Weekly Standard over and over and over again that Osama bin Laden and Saddam Hussein are friends, and Saddam's going to give weapons of mass destruction to Osama bin Laden to kill you and your mama and your hometown if we don't preempt them and stop them from attacking us first. Let's do that. We could get away with that. People are so upset about the 3,000 dead New Yorkers, we could exploit that grief and fear. And we could overthrow whoever we want now.
Do you want to comment on Scott's reply?
Our policies did not cause 9/11. Our policies did not cause Assad to use poison gas against his own people and kill 500,000 of them. Our policies did not cause Putin to kill journalists and to crush freedom in Russia. I mean, Mr. Horton may believe that the U.S. is the source and cause of evil in the world. I disagree.
Okay. I don't know if you want to have another dialogue about that briefly. Go ahead. Yeah, and then we'll. Yeah.
Well, the men who did 9/11 were responsible for 9/11, but they were motivated by American foreign policy. And, I actually just went back and watched the CNN interview of bin Laden from 1998 or 96. And the whole story is, well, they hate our bases in Saudi Arabia and our support for Israel. Back to you in the studio, Jimmy. Because nobody said they hate us for our freedom. They hate us because their radical Islamic beliefs make them hate those who are good and innocent and beautiful and love their mama. No one had told that lie yet. So
you
it was
think
just
the
plain and
Taliban,
simple.
You think the Taliban are doing what they're doing right now in Afghanistan because they hate? What do they hate? We got out of Afghanistan.
Well, the Taliban aren't attacking us. I don't know what you're talking about. They were attacking us until we left, and then they stopped.
No, I'm saying, do you think that there's going to be liberty and freedom, that young girls in Afghanistan will have opportunities and the like?
No. Okay, I don't know what the point of that was.
Well,
the point of that is that liberty matters around the world, that bin Laden was not provoked by, I don't believe, our having some bases in Saudi Arabia that we had had for an awful long time, or by our supporting Israel, which had been there for an awful long time.
You don't believe that because you don't know anything about it, I guess. Why don't you read the Declaration of War from 1996 and 1998, or, you know what, better yet, read Perfect Soldiers by Terry McDermott. It's the biography of the Hamburg cell of 9/11 hijackers. Don't interrupt yet. Hang on a second. Mohammed Atta, the lead hijacker on September 11th, he joined Al-Qaeda, decided to join Al-Qaeda and attack the United States when Israel invaded Lebanon in 1996 in Operation Grapes of Wrath. And a couple of months later, Osama bin Laden put out his declaration of war, declaring war against the United States and ranting on and on about the Qana massacre of 106 dead civilians killed by the Israelis hiding in a UN shelter. And that was when Mohammed Atta and his friend Ramzi bin al-Shibh decided they wanted to join Al-Qaeda. They then went and traveled to Afghanistan, met bin Laden, joined the group, and were recruited to carry out the planes operation against the United States of America. So even if you want to pretend to believe that all bin Laden cared about was that we didn't all want to convert to his religion or something else, his recruitment shtick was, these people are hurting our people. Simple as that.
Look, Russia is a corrupt, mafia, intelligence-led state headed by Vladimir Putin. It's not the way you can deal in the modern world. So you just have to sort of pull up your socks and say, look, I know it's unreasonable. You can't believe a free country can mobilize its opinion and stand up against a juggernaut like the Red Army. Well, they've done it, and they're going to continue to do it. That's what my prediction is.
Okay,
Unless
but in your analogy, Hitler has nukes.
Pull out the support for Ukraine, and we can't.
In your analogy, General, Hitler has nukes, and Stalin has no choice but to surrender.
I'm not going to deal in analogies like that.
It would take the Western allies to intervene. It would take the Western allies to directly intervene, and we can't.
Scott, I know, for example, I actually, there's a friend of mine who's a Ukrainian soldier, Vladimchenko, who arrested me for being a Russian spy, rather comically, on day 2 of the big war, and I saw him very recently, and he's still fighting for Ukraine, as are all his friends. And he has, now let's be clear about this, in 2022, the Russians invade and they take 1/5 of Ukraine, and they've got still 1/5, and they've got a little bit more, but not much more. So why aren't they in Kyiv? Why is the Ukrainian army fighting so strong? Why can you answer that question? Why has the Ukrainian army managed to stop the Russian army from taking the capital? Is it because they believe in what they're fighting for? Is it because they believe in liberty?
Sure.
And someone like you, sir, you're like Lord Haw, broadcasting as if you're from Nazi-occupied Berlin.
Come on. You're like George W. Bush saying we can't cut and run now or our boys will have died in vain, so we have to stay in the war. That's what you're like.
I don't know, but there are ordinary Ukrainian soldiers are fighting for their country and their idea of freedom.
Ordinary Iraqis were fighting with Americans for their faction against the other side. We can't leave now.
Listening to me. I mean, I don't know whether there's a... Listen, mate, I don't know whether there's a KGB guy underneath your table holding your balls.
Oh, give me a break.
Like
That's
this.
really all you got.
Oh, really? Oh, so I can tell you 4 Russian people I know who are critical of Vladimir Putin.
What percentage of the army are conscripts in Ukraine?
Natasha Esmerova, Boris Nemtsov, Alexei Navalny, all shot or poisoned, right?
Yeah.
Now, you cannot say this about the critics of Zelensky. The critics of Zelensky were out in the streets of Kyiv in their tens of thousands.
A lot of critics of Zelensky have been charged with treason and kidnapping
and usurp
and
the Kremlin, which is a dictatorship.
Yeah, a lot of dissidents in Ukraine
Okay.
have been rounded up and put in prison.
Let me give Henry a chance to respond. First of all, Henry, John Sweeney said you're a servant of the fascist state. What's your response to that?
What does he think he's doing?
Well, first of all, it's simply not the case that all of these Russian soldiers lost their lives, to say nothing of the many Ukrainians the Russians have killed. We don't know exactly how many, but it's certainly in the tens and possibly hundreds of thousands, did not die because of NATO enlargement. Let's be clear about that, because that's a red herring, and it's, I think, an integral part of Russian propaganda. We should be skeptical of that argument. The reasons... If you'll let me finish.
Everything you say is CIA propaganda, then, if the other side of the story is
I'm
all
also
Russian
CIA.
propaganda.
Scott, I'll come back to you.
It's such a cheap shot. I'm so sick of this. Yeah, every time when I was right about Iraq and you were wrong about Iraq, that was Saddam Hussein's propaganda that I was repeating, and that was MI6 and CIA propaganda that you were repeating. Who was right about that one, Niall?
Shall we, it's pronounced Neil.
It's
Shall
Neil.
We go
Okay,
back
whatever.
To the question.
Scott, I'll come back to you.
I was
Go ahead,
repeating
Neil.
Saddam Hussein's propaganda
If we
in
can be-
2003.
Scott, that's
saying we
Iraq.
shouldn't
We're
do
on,
this,
we're
and
on
you said we
Ukraine.
should.
We're on Ukraine. And Neil's talking. Go ahead, Neil.
If you could let me try to answer the question that Peter put. Putin regarded Ukraine...
Talk faster. You're wasting time.
Perhaps you could learn some manners, Scott, and we could get further. Putin...
Look, some of what he says is right, but it's a massive pile of lies by omission, mostly. Starting with anybody who says the truth about this or adds the additional context about this from anything but London and Washington's point of view is repeating the propaganda of the other side. That's what they try to say about Syria, and that's what they try to say about Libya, and that's what they try to say about Iraq, and that's what they try to say about Afghanistan. You're just repeating the propaganda of the enemy, and yet the dissidents were right about all of those, and the people who were repeating the point of view of Washington and London have done nothing but create disaster after disaster after disaster. So I'm not going to sit here and stand for Russian propaganda. I got accusations of that. I got 7,800 citations in my book.
Scott, Neil and I are not accusing you of repeating any propaganda. We're asking what you think. I'm granting that your book is a meticulous piece of work. Go ahead.
The only citations of Russians talking in there is either, Russian media exposing something about the Russian state or just directly conveying their statements because I'm saying here's what they said, not because I'm saying here's how you know it's true because they said it. I'm saying here's an example of a claim that they made.
Why did Putin go in when he did?
There's no Russian propaganda in any of my arguments. As he said,
I'm not accusing you of that. I'm asking you, why did Putin go in when he did?
Yeah, I know, but I'm refuting his false accusation that the other side of the story is somehow falling for the lies or repeating the lies of the Russians when that has nothing to do with our conversation here. Now that I'm done refuting that, I want to go back to your previous question about why they lied in the 1990s. In 1990, it was because the Soviet Union still existed, and they still had troops in Eastern Europe. The USSR did not finally fall until Christmas 1991. And so, of course, they had to tell the Russians what they needed to hear to get them out of the way, to get them to acquiesce. And they continued to lie. One of the greatest examples of this, you can read at Brookings by James Goldgeier, wrote all about this, was Warren Christopher in 1993. Went to Moscow and lied right to Yeltsin's face, told him again, we're going to do, this is when they replaced the CSCE with the Partnership for Peace, and said, we're going to do the Partnership for Peace, and you and Ukraine will be equal partners in it. So in other words, Ukraine's neutrality will be guaranteed. There won't be a fight over Ukraine, and we'll all be partners together. And Yeltsin said, this is the greatest stroke of brilliance. Tell Bill, I'm so enthused, et cetera, et cetera. And then he come to find out in the beginning of 94 that Clinton announced that, psych, we didn't mean that. We're actually going to expand NATO at your expense anyway. And yes, they did grouse and complain all through the 1990s, and including, you notice he just skipped 1999 when they did the first round and brought the first 3 nations into NATO. They launched the aggressive war against Serbia the same week or 2 weeks later, and proving that it's not just a defensive alliance. And the Russians went completely crazy. And all of America's best friends in the Russian establishment, people like Chubais and Gaidar and all those who'd been friends with Clinton and Gore,
They said this is the worst thing that you could do. You're destroying the entire new warm relationship that we created, and we have no reason to do this. And he cited George Kennan, but let me add here, pardon me, I'm trying to talk fast for you here, but listen.
Let me read George Kennan.
Hey,
you both mentioned it.
Let me finish it real quick. Two-thirds, sir, supermajority of the population of the Council on Foreign Relations was against NATO expansion. Okay? The entire population of the American embassy in Moscow was against it. The experts were against it. The very few powerful wonks and politically connected interests in the Clinton government overrode them and decided to do it anyway.
George
it wasn't
Kennan.
just Kennan and Pat Buchanan. It was many, including Paul Nitze and Robert McNamara and William Perry, the sitting Secretary of Defense at the time, said that they should not do this, and for one reason, because it'll unnecessarily provoke the Russians. They said the same thing in 2004 with the second round.
Why did we do it? In other words, if the argument was clear that it was against our own interest to expand NATO, what was the motive?
Well, it's public choice theory, right? It's some interests are satisfied. So one of the things that was a very big, two of the things that were extremely important, and this is all from the New York Times. This isn't conspiracy theory stuff, okay? This is pure just journalism out there. You can find it. I have all the footnotes. It was the major incentives pushing for it were Lockheed dollars and Polish votes. And the Republicans were attacking the Democrats for being weak on it. And they said, we're going to corner the Republicans on this issue in Illinois and Pennsylvania, where there are a lot of Eastern European Americans whose votes they wanted to get. And Bruce Jackson from Lockheed launched the Committee to Expand NATO and spent millions of dollars lobbying and whining and dining policymakers and Eastern European leaders to get everybody all on board to build the consensus for this thing, because simply his job was getting rid of fighter jets at American taxpayer expense. And again, there are books about this. There's a great article by Richard Cummings about it, and you can read about it in the New York Times. Bruce Jackson, Lockheed, NATO expansion. It's in the New York Times. This is what the incentives were. It's called public choice theory. It means there's no national interest. There's just the individual interests of the men in charge. And in this case, we're talking about William Jefferson Clinton and his men. And they were terrible men, and they made terrible decisions. Now, we had to skip, and I know it's a long, complicated subject, but we skipped all the way to 22 and the current war. But just barely touching on 2014. And of course, skipping, completely omitting the fact that America, for the second time in 10 years, spent tens or maybe even hundreds of millions of dollars supporting a phony revolution against the elected government in Ukraine, in the Orange Revolution.
Take a moment.
Like Russia, not the Soviet Union.
Russia, I said Russia.
Okay,
That's
well,
Russia, the country.
I mean, I think that there would certainly be a lot of very strong diplomacy. I really cannot see the U.S. invading Canada, the U.S. invading Mexico. I mean, Mexico, by the way, had extremely friendly relations with Fidel Castro for all of the duration of the Soviet Empire. We didn't invade Mexico over that. So I mean, I think this idea that we go around invading like anyone who forms an alliance we don't like, I think is bizarre.
Okay, comment. Yeah.
Sure, I just need a short amount of time for this one.
Go ahead.
This is how we got into World War I. Is the Zimmerman telegram promised a German alliance with Mexico, and we declared war against Germany. That was it. And by the way, who in the world in the middle of World War I thought the Germans were coming to Mexico to help them retake the American Southwest? But that was good enough for Woodrow Wilson. Don't even think about it. And because the lesson was the Germans ought not to be talking that way, not whether they could really accomplish such a thing or not. And then, Cuba, you talk about Cuba. Cuba wasn't the world empire. Cuba was one of the satellite states of the Soviet Union. So Mexico's more or less friendly relationship with them is irrelevant. It wasn't a military alliance of any kind. And America did do an illegal coup d'etat, which failed in the Bay of Pigs. And we almost got into a nuclear war during the Cuban Missile Crisis when the Russians put nuclear missiles in Cuba, and Jack Kennedy announced that he would burn the whole world to the ground before he let that continue. Remove your missiles or else, he said, and forced them out. And as Putin said in his speech, he said, when he declared war, again, I'm not saying this is a good enough reason to declare war, but I'm saying it's a reasonable argument. He said, and he ticked off the times, your what-you-call missiles, if they were placed in Kharkiv, could get here in 15 minutes. Your Tomahawks could get here in 10. And if you installed hypersonic missiles in Kharkiv, they could be in Moscow in 5 minutes. He said, this is like a knife at our throat. What are we supposed to do? Nothing?
If anyone was talking about installing missiles in Kiev, American missiles in Kiev, then that would actually be a valid argument. But I don't know why we're even discussing the hypothetical when.
Well, Bill Clinton promised not to put military equipment into the countries that he brought into the military alliance, and then he did it anyway. And in fact, you guys will remember that when Putin, in his demands last December, said, I want all NATO military forces that have been expanded into Eastern Europe and the new NATO countries brought back to where they were in 1997. They treated 1997 like it was 1897. Are you crazy? We're not going back. What's 1997 have to do with anything? Oh, it was just Bill Clinton's solemn oath that, yes, we're expanding our alliance, but we promise not to move our equipment in. So now Vladimir Putin is supposed to accept that we're making Ukraine a de facto member of NATO, even in the words of American officials in the New York Times. But no, don't worry, we promise never to put missiles in. And if we do, it'll be too late for you to do anything about it because there'll be 5 minutes from Moscow. So again, I'm not saying that's a good enough reason to invade, but it's just ridiculous to say that's not a legitimate security concern. That's just a hollow excuse. Come on.
And has supported the killing and murdering of innocent Israelis in cafes and restaurants. To Trita Parsi, these things don't matter in his argument.
That's not true. That's a damn lie.
Hang on,
Anyone can read the book, and he does not ignore Iranian support for Hamas at all. He just puts it in the correct timeline.
Scott, let me speak, please. I try to, you spoke. Let's try to keep this clear for the
what you're saying about my friend is incorrect.
What I'm saying about your friend is correct because his argument, if we put the facts that I gave you into his argument that says it was Israel that turned Iran into an enemy, that argument doesn't stand. How can Israel turn Iran into the enemy when Israel helped Iran in the Iran-Iraq war, and it was the Islamic Republic of Iran that declared war, proxy war on the state of Israel?
Well, you guys can quibble about the timeline and who turned on who first if you want. And as
but that's very important.
It is, but you just outright stated that he doesn't mention, he completely ignores Iran's support for Hamas. I already said in this interview earlier, in this debate earlier, that as he explains, the Iranians did not begin backing Hamas until after the Rabin doctrine had changed, and they were excluded from Madrid, and Rabin had officially, inaugurated the reversal of the strategy of the periphery. He does not ignore Hamas terrorism, and he doesn't ignore Iranian support for it either. That's all in there. And he also does quote Israeli strategists, and this is what's so great about that book, is there's no news cycle BS in it. It's all quotes from the highest level strategists in America, Israel, and Iran. And he has Israeli strategists saying, we needed new glue for the alliance with the United States. After the fall of the Soviet Union, why did they need us? And what we decided on was Islamic fundamentalism, and particularly
what we decided on, we chose Islamic fundamentalism? That's absurd.
The new glue for the alliance. The reason why America needed to support Israel was to hold back the Islamic horde and all of that, narrative that they are America's, easternmost fort, or the West's easternmost fort in the Middle East, holding back the tide, and that's why we have to prop them up.
So Islamic terrorists were not killing American citizens, and it's because of, I don't understand, to be honest with you, the idea that it's because of Israel that Al-Qaeda...
Islamic fundamentalism. I said... They decided that they would use Islamic fundamentalism as the excuse for the alliance, as new glue for the alliance between their country and ours. That's what they said.